You're listening to Shoe In, covering the ins and outs of all things footwear, from sneakers to heels, loafers to slippers, and every type of shoe in between. Brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. And now your footwear insiders, Matt Priest and Andy Pope.
Hey, Matt, how's it going?
Good, man. How are you?
Doing good. Jasmine, how are you?
Great. Fantastic.
Wow. Nice adjectives.
Yeah.
That makes me happy.
I got
big
some
words.
coffee, so I feel, extra good.
Wow.
That's awesome.
All right. Well, that's the key to our heart is coffee.
And shoes.
Shoes
Coffee
and
and shoes in that order.
Yes.
Interesting.
What was that company? What was that company that made shoes out of coffee? Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Out of Brooklyn.
Out of
Which did you
Coffee
like?
Grounds. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember what brand that is.
Maybe our
but-
guest will remember because he also is from Brooklyn. So, Danny Muskat, Senior Vice President, Strategic Business Development at Deer Stags. Danny, welcome to Shoe and Show, man. We're glad to have you on.
Thanks, Matt. I think it's good to be on.
Cool.
Soon to be former resident of Brooklyn.
Oh yeah,
unfortunately,
you moved. That's right. You moved. You got out of the city, huh?
They kicked me out because I didn't know who made shoes out of coffee. So.
Very important.
It happens. It happens to all of us.
That's funny.
Right.
So, a couple of weeks ago, I did this interview with the New York Times, and basically the interview was on independent retailers having problems in this environment of direct to consumer, et cetera. A lot of churn and burn. I was quoted, and then Danny sent me a note, give me a lot of good background on different things that he saw in e-commerce and independents were doing and how things are changing. And we have a lot of conversations with the staff at Deer Stags on changing kind of operational models that they're dealing with to adjust to the changing consumer and where people are buying. So really this kind of episode is just kind of on disruption that we see in the marketplace. So Danny, over the past couple of years, you guys have really been trying to follow the consumer and see how they're changing and where they're looking. And so you guys have been working really hard on building a robust e-commerce or omni-channel strategy. So maybe take us through over the last couple of years what you guys have seen in terms of change in the retail marketplace and then what you guys are kind of doing to adjust to that.
Well, I think your point of following the consumer is the most important. And I think that we've long seen e-commerce as an opportunity because you really are most directly, dealing with your consumer. We don't do a big direct-to-consumer business. We sell mostly through retail partners online. But it's the closest interaction you have to them. And if you can put good product, it's really good quality, and it's at the price they want in front of them and get to as many as you can, you have the opportunity to interact with them. And, it's funny when you say speak with the consumer. For us, I think a big shift that came was back at the FDRA conference probably 3 years ago when my father, Rick, gave one of the addresses there. He sort of talked about we were seeing all this seismic change in the industry, and everyone was very I guess I'd say scared because there was a lot of change, and it was very difficult to navigate. And he made this point, and I'm sure he's not the only one who's made it. I've seen similar points made, but I thought he put it really well because he took us through the history of disruption in footwear in his career, going from the independents to the chain stores, going from production in the USA to production overseas, et cetera, change from brick and mortar retail over to e-commerce. And what he ended with was, listen, if you just, hear out, speak to your consumer, everything's going to work out fine. And I remember kind of chewing on that because I thought it was pretty interesting, but it was a little intimidating or overwhelming to me because I didn't quite understand how do you speak to, several million consumers, and especially if you're a brand like us that doesn't have your own e-commerce store that's directly in contact with those millions of consumers. One of the things we did here in our company was we had an all-hands meeting, and we thought it would be nice for our full company to see that presentation that my dad had made. So we put that, we've been sent the video by you guys, and we showed it to our company, and everyone really enjoyed it. But it really hit home again to me at the end of the presentation when you said, listen, if we just listen to our consumer, everything's going to be okay. And I was, again, trying to wrap my arms around, well, what does that mean? How do you talk to millions and millions of people? And what occurred to me was that you can't speak to them directly, but because you have this channel open, because of the amount of feedback that you're getting now, in the sales that you see, in the reviews that you read online, in the return rates that you get or don't get on your shoes, you're hearing from them all the time. And also that because so much of your product is being delivered to the consumer's door versus them picking it out in the store and kind of getting a glimpse of it, you're getting an opportunity to make an impression and open up a dialogue with that customer, maybe not in the most literal sense, every time that Amazon package or that Zappos package or that Macy's.com package arrives at their door. So I think that was the beginning of my understanding that e-commerce, the shift to it really opened up a dialogue that could help all brands, but our brand in particular, improve our relationship with the customer and our brand presence.
So, Danny, when you think about your customer, the Deer Stacks customer, it's hard to not make this a discussion on how homogenous a customer base is, but and you guys aren't in every category. You kind of pick your lanes and do really well in your lanes, but even when you're limited in your lanes, there's not, your customer's not homogenous. So how on earth do you kind of sift through that conversation? And what did your customer tell you as you kind of reconfigured your thinking around communicating with your customer?
Well, they told us a bunch of things. One, sometimes there's some white space. There's customers still looking for maybe a style or a category of footwear that is no longer the focus of the trend. But there are people that like it and are used to wearing it. They're accustomed to it. And we found that there were sometimes some legacy type styles or legacy, I'd say sort of big shoes that were big in the industry but aren't really as prevalent or even prevalent at all in brick and mortar anymore. And oftentimes we see those were some of our highest selling styles online, even if we didn't have a brick and mortar presence with them. So, things were hard to find. It goes back to the same reason that e-commerce started when Zappos started in 1999 and Nick Swinmurn couldn't find his size.
Mm-hmm.
Things like size and width, where we might offer that in much of our assortment, but there are a lot of customers that wear a size 15 wide. They didn't have as many choices. So some of it was just low-hanging fruit of known entities that maybe were harder to find and the customer was shifting online. But for a brand like us, what we found was there was an opportunity to get more in front of more products, more assortment in front of the consumer, where in a brick and mortar environment, maybe you were thought of, if you're our brand, you were thought of really strictly as sort of dress casual or dress comfort. And it was very difficult for us to get more fashionable product on the shelves of the brick and mortar retailers we sell. They might have looked to another brand for that. They might have looked to their private label for it. They might have felt that they were covered in your price point or they didn't need your price point, whatever it may be. But online, there's a lot of appetite and there's a lot of ways consumers can search for product. They can search by typing a category into a search bar. They can type a specific shoe style name in search bar, but they can also navigate through a website. They can filter their search by their size. They can go on the navigation panes and go into men's dress boots. So if we had good product, obviously it all starts with the right product. And if it's the right product, but if you have relevant content in terms of the shoes that you're putting up, coming up when the customer gets to the point in their search where a page comes up of choices that's right there, it opens up opportunity for us to actually sell quite a few more styles. So I have a really good, one of my mentors in the shoe business, who has a lot of e-com experience, told me a long time ago, you kind of got to pick your lane. So to your original question, you have to choose to some extent. Are you playing in the 90% world that does include Amazon and includes a lot of distribution, or are you very highly specialized in really sort of controlling your brand experience? And one isn't right or wrong. But the irony is, I think, while we're a brand that probably plays more in the lane to the masses, it opens up the opportunity for us to sell a much broader array of product and not just, things that are kind of like, standards.
So you can offer a lot more different types of product, which is great, but then you got to execute against that, right? So your guys got to.
That's the challenge. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like if you were doing brick and mortar, obviously back in the day, if somebody's going to buy 3 types and you make those 3 types, and there you go. And now you've got all these offerings that you got to execute. So I'm sure it puts a little bit more pressure on your production teams and sourcing teams to execute all that.
It's that's the $6 million question right now. For us, it certainly puts pressure on the sourcing teams.
Right.
Factories are used to, and brands like us are used to dealing, like you said, in a limited number of styles and a lot of depth behind them. And now we're looking to do a lot of styles and maybe smaller runs. They're not insignificant or unsubstantial, but they're not what they were in the past. So
Right.
How do you get the product made? And our sourcing team does a really good job of that, but it is an everyday conversation and an everyday struggle.
Yeah.
We believe in this idea of sort of more is more in terms of more product, as I was saying, gives more opportunity for sale. But, how much can you physically keep in your distribution center, and how much can you afford to buy and you're open to buy? So those are challenges. But the biggest one now, which I think, retailers and wholesalers alike face, is on the operational side. There obviously are costs involved with, fulfilling a single pair order for a dropship customer, or, with a warehouse not having, 6 key styles that they're going to that every time they go to fill an order for your big 1,000-store chain, but rather, hundreds of styles, and then they've got to go out and pick a large variety to ship out a replenishment order to Zappos. It might be, a couple thousand pairs spread across 100 styles. So a lot of the challenge for us is more on that operational end to both continue delivering great service, because I think that we've done that for a long time, but also do it in a cost-effective manner. And so that's one of the big challenges, and also to be close to the customer, because at the end of the day, I think almost everybody, every retailer, every wholesaler, in some ways every consumer, has a complicated relationship with Amazon. But one of the things that Amazon has made happen is that people expect and want stuff to get to them quickly, and it makes sense. It's convenient. It puts a convenience in their life, and sometimes you need something the next day, and sometimes you just want it the next day. A brand like us can't deliver something next day. We're not located in a place to do that. So how do we both compete with that and enable our retail partners to best accommodate that? So those are the challenges that we're working through all the time.
Let's talk a little bit about the relationships and changing dynamics in the industry as you see it. And it's both related to your brick and mortar partners as well as those doing e-commerce, because obviously, as you said, there's a change to the number of types of styles and product that you can pop up on the internet. But some independents are having some real struggles because maybe they're not adapting, as well as other independents who are succeeding in this environment. So what do you see in the marketplace in terms of what are independents succeeding? What are they doing well? And not just in brick and mortar, but maybe with their omni-channel strategy or e-commerce. And then also, how have your relationships changed or morphed over the last couple of years as you guys have gotten a lot better with e-commerce and had a better strategy and evolve? Like how is the industry evolving on these conversations?
Right. Well, I don't want to try to speak too expertly to the independent business, because it's not the biggest part of our business, although I do have some experience with it. I've been out on the road selling independents, and I've worked with them, and I know some of them. And like I said, there's its complicated answer to anything having to do with e-commerce and Amazon in particular. And one of the things that we've seen that's interesting is, there was a time where it would be difficult for us to sell to independent retailers, because they would say, well, you are distributed, you are on Zappos and on Amazon. And so my customer can go in and they would call it showrooming, and they would look at the style, but then go, whether it was for convenience or because they were a couple bucks less, buy it on Amazon. But one of the things that we saw was that a lot of the savvy independents, sort of took a can't beat them, join them stance. Amazon, as you all know, sells in 2 ways. They have a retail operation, or 1P, and then they have a marketplace. And, a lot of those stores can establish a store in that marketplace. So the good ones, I think, took advantage of the ability to get a lot more traffic in their store, a virtual store, by going to that Amazon marketplace not easy to do. There's a lot of costs involved. The good ones have to maintain a really strong relationship with their suppliers so that they're not, competing with them and they're undercutting them. So it's complicated, but I think that that's been part of the evolution is, you can't swim against the ocean. Mm-hmm. So just like us, I think a lot of the independents that are doing well realize they can sell things online on their own stores. They can sell within the Amazon ecosphere. There are certain brands that do it. And the other thing is, I think what's come about when you mention omnichannel is like everyone talks about this word experiential. And, a lot of this is my own observation. And I could well be wrong in what I think, but, experience in my mind is different for every different seller of product or for everybody. So, what drives me like a little nuts is when like the experience that somebody puts together is like, we're going to put a coffee shop in the back. In some places that might make sense. You might want them to linger. There might be a reason for them to be there. But the experience an independent retailer offers has a lot to do with, they know you. They're fitting your foot. They're helping you solve a problem. So how do you translate that experience into online? Whether it might be assortment, it might be sizes. I always get frustrated when I feel like ourselves, we don't do it, or if retailers that we're selling to, don't listen to the customer. If the customer's saying, I buy a size 15s, but the retailer's saying, well, I don't really have that much room in my store, so I don't carry 15s. It's like you're giving away that opportunity for that sale. That customer's looking for you. So I think a lot of the experience that can be offered, and in the cases of Zappos, it's about service and about sort of making them really happy and confident in their purchase. In the case of Amazon, it's about I can get it the next day. In the case of an independent retailer, it might be, how can I take that personal experience or that knowledge that, this certain style is going to work really well for somebody who has foot pain, has a need, or has a plantar fasciitis or whatever it might be, and I have the right shoe for them, or they have a size and width that's difficult to find, and I have an assortment for them. So I think that those are the experiential ways that the good omni-channel retailers are figuring out to listen to their customer and provide them what they want, and use it as an opportunity, not as just seeing a lot of competition out there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And as far as your assortment, I'm on your website now looking at the No Socks by Deer Stags Rex, and you can get it in size 16. So for all of our listeners out there who have
Andre the Giant, please
you can get it, Rex.
So it's wild. It's really funny that you hit on that one. Because that's a relatively new style that we introduced.
Yeah, I like it.
I believe this spring, and the sales of it were so heavily skewed. It's like the bell curve got beaten up because we were seeing we couldn't fill fast enough on those sizes. So I guess that and it's sort of an athleisure kind of look. It's not a super typical Deer Stag style in that it's a little bit of a sneaker look, but
yeah,
in that size it was hard to find. So. And we say to ourselves, are there other places that customer's looking that it's hard for them to find too?
Yeah, that's a great thought. Let me kind of pivot back to your structure because Deer Stags is a privately held company started by your grandfather. Just a great history, and we know and love all of the Muskats that work at Deer Stags and the broader Deer Stags employee base, and just have had a great time just getting to know you guys over the years as has the industry. You're kind of an industry icon. The name is the Muskat name. And so we've talked about a lot of these changes, and you're not publicly traded. You're not a multi-billion dollar conglomerate. You may not have the resources to pivot on some of these things you really want to pivot on. But at the same time, what we seem to be finding with the industry right now is that agility is king. So your ability to pivot, even if you don't have all the resources, you're able to kind of quickly adapt. Talk to us about internally when you decide to do something, you bring something back to the team. You say, you know what, I think we really need to plan towards this. Is agility something that's key to your success? And how does a company the size of Deer Stags think about agility?
Well, in my early years here, as I sort of learned about the business, I saw that was one of our advantages was that, you're sort of the speedboat, so you can turn it around a lot faster than the big cruise line. So we were able to be agile. And cases that I think of are like when the SARS virus came around. And that was when it was pretty early in my career. And there was a lot of uncertainty in what would happen if, all of a sudden, containers of shoes were quarantined. And, the leadership of the company, my uncle and my dad at the time, realized, well, the asset that we have is that, we have product in stock. We are sort of a very evergreen product, basic product, year-round product kind of company. The thing that could kill us is if we don't have products. And we were able to very quickly both adapt some supply chain stuff and, take some inventory risk so that you could get out ahead of that. And that might be harder if you're a publicly traded company. They might say, well, you're really over inventoried today, even if there was a good solid reason behind it. That bet worked out for us. If it didn't work out, we would have worked through it. You know what I mean? We would have figured something out, but we don't have the pressure. On the other hand, like you said, you don't have the resources to do everything. But specifically as like e-commerce came around, there was a period where there was some tension. Just being totally candid.
Sure.
I felt like I was coming into my own in my understanding of the business, and I won't take you through all the history, but my very initial background in the business was on the e-commerce side, but e-commerce was a negligible piece of the business. But I kind of, because of that, learned it early, and I knew a lot of the players that were involved in the early days, and kept myself involved. It was sort of, it became, as I became more passionate about the business itself, it was like my passion. And I think our brand naturally fit that model pretty well because we, like I said, we do a lot of size and width things. We have a lot of things that are in stock. So, we're not so dependent on a fashion hitting and selling out within one season.
Right.
But I realized that was becoming, it was quickly gaining to where it was becoming not just a scaled up part of our business, where it was of scale, but it was becoming, if not the majority, one of the biggest channels of our business. And we were still doing it as sort of the secondary or the reactionary thing to the other parts of our business. We weren't managing them separately. We were really managing a brick and mortar business and then tacking on for e-commerce, and the company would say, like, Danny, you take care of that, which was fine, and it was growing nicely, and I felt this is nice. I'm trusted pretty well to take this on, but I started to realize there was a point where, one, I couldn't give my attention or enough attention to all of the different accounts that we were working with, and two, that because we were waiting sometimes on the brick and mortar calendar, we weren't serving the needs of the e-commerce business as well as we should, because those decisions could be made sooner, and they might be made differently than the brick and mortar piece. So I started advocating internally and with the family. And I'm sure Rick talked about it when he was on the podcast with you guys. But one of the things that we say in our company is, like, we battle it out, and then we say, like, what's for lunch? And that is how things work. So there was a few months of battling it out where I was like, we got to shift things around here. We've got to, when we're deciding on our new assortment for the next fall season, let's start with the e-commerce thing. We can always tack on later to other stuff, but let's make our decision sooner so we can maximize that season, have product in for the full season, and not be waiting for 2 or 3 large-scale e-commerce, brick and mortar chains to get on a style or a color so that we kind of matched everything up to it. And I met some resistance, and I started realizing that we needed more staff again. I was only one person, and I was kind of managing most of these accounts, but there was so much more we wanted to do, whether it was marketing or, the more transactional marketing, Google AdWords or Amazon marketing, whatever it may be. There was a lot of analytics that we knew were out there. How do you read through 1 million reviews? You can't, but there's got to be a way to aggregate some of that review content and learn what your customer likes and doesn't like about your product, so that you can, either tell them in the page that you put there that customer saying this fits a little big. Well, we can tell them that, and suggest that they buy a half size down. I bought a pair of shoes from one of the digitally native sites recently, and I'm sure they use AI to do this, but artificial intelligence to do this. But they told me what size to buy based on what I said my size was. But we didn't have the resources internally to do that. So, and I was kind of advocating for it and was feeling a little resistance. This is 3 or 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. And first I got a little frustrated. I kept making the point. And then eventually I realized I had to adjust my argument. I had to make sure I hit my audience right, because there was an understanding of it here. It was just we had to present the numbers differently. We had to show both how, really where the shift was happening, but also how it could sit within the full mix of what we did. So once we got on the page together with that, we were able to be nimble and agile, like you said, and we were able to pretty quickly bring on more people dedicated to the e-commerce business, shift a lot of our customer service and our planning resources to pay a lot more attention to it individually and not just sort of as the other part of the business, which it was for a while. And now, taking that further, we're really starting to expand out that team. We just brought in our first digital analytics hire, and that's a department that a company like us has never had and wouldn't typically have. But our feeling is that there's a lot of low-hanging fruit in all that information that's provided, either from the sale or from the retail sales that you see, or from the review content, like I said, from the return rates, conversion rates, all sorts of information out there kind of in the ether that can hopefully help you get a little bit ahead. So some of the compliments that we've received over the years, I think from some of our retail partners, is that they do say that we are a little more agile and we are a little bit ahead on that, which is, I think is really, it's nice to hear. It would be nicer if it meant that we're doubling and tripling our business, but I think it's hopefully to our advantage in the long run.
Where do you see all of us heading at this point with our industry? What is a key thing that you think to succeed in the next 5 years companies need? I mean, we all talk about agility and speed and quality and all that, but what do you think is most important right now, especially related to e-commerce?
Sorry, you stumped me for a second.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think about this a lot because there's so much stuff going on, but I just feel like there's got to be a few key things that are out there that are coming down the pike that kind of example, like 4 years ago, you guys were dealing with some of these issues and you're having it out and you're trying to figure it out and you're going through it. And I think right now we're about to start hitting that again in a different way because Amazon's changing to one day and and all these new sites are popping up and D2C is becoming a larger issue in our industry. And so I'm just trying to see what you think when you see all this stuff happening.
So like anything, right. Eventually, there always seems to be consolidation. There are things that, especially when you have growth, which you do have. I mean, we're seeing growth in almost all of our e-commerce accounts, especially the ones that do it well. But the ones that aren't doing well, it probably says that they're not going to be. They might not be around in a while. I mean, because that's been my experience when people either ignore that part of the business or don't execute it well. Their businesses might go away. So how do you ensure that you're continuing to go? I think. Some of the other things which are really just starting to hit my radar is like, and you guys talk about it a lot, sustainability. And for a company like us, that's a really difficult topic. I mean, how do you, within so many of the confines you have of what's available to you, of the prices of things are. So how do you tackle those things that consumers want? You go to enough conferences, you hear it all the time of what the new customer wants. How do you continue to evolve? Not just to do what you know how to do from your past experience and that applies to e-commerce, but to do what's going to come. I mean, what we just went through and hopefully have avoided, but we don't know, with the tariff issue could lead to so many, sourcing and operational challenges. Does that take your eye off the ball of what you need to be doing, on the front end to drive growth? So, I think the biggest challenges are what we talked about earlier, aligning the supply chain and as industry and as a country figuring out, well, this is what's expected. So at a certain point, does that, things I assume sort of fall into place a little bit where it becomes more the norm to do. And then how do we, continue to stay abreast of and keep doing what the consumer wants, even when there are all sorts of different challenges that come up all the time.
Yeah, it's easier to take your eye off the ball, right?
Yeah, it is.
So with that, before we flip it to Jasmine for our famous fashion and footwear and focus segment, I just want to get your take on an idea I just had in talking to you. I'm thinking about opening up a retail chain that
you should see Jasmine's face right now.
The storefronts are very
no cop.
The depth of the stores are no more than 18 feet, but they're very wide. And I would just call it wide shoes. And they would only sell sizes that are large or wide, but it'd be extremely wide. Like it would take up a whole half strip mall maybe. So are you interested in going in with me halfsies on this?
On the 18-foot shoe, the row of 18-foot shoes.
No. It's
Andy,
only
send me your pitch deck, and I'll think about it.
It's only 18 feet deep. It's only 18 feet deep, so it's very it's very thin, but it's very wide, and so it's just wide shoes.
I will say.
So what are we having for lunch?
The one thing I would say is, which I think is interesting. You look at all these digitally native startup companies that now are going to storefronts. Like a Bonobos that was really sort of like a showroom to buy it online and have it shipped to you.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I started thinking about maybe 5 or 10, probably 10 years ago at least, was like you had all these physical spaces, but so much of it was tied up, in the backroom space to keep the back stock.
Right.
And because of that, they were limited in what they could carry. So they couldn't carry the Rex inside, the shoe that you found earlier, Matt, and that size 16 wide that was still wanted by the consumer. But if you could take some of that space from the back and the retailers, the good retailers, the Nordstroms and the Targets of the world seem to be doing this, kind of having more of a mix, the omni-channel thing of whether it's buy online and pick up in store, or see it in the store and buy it online, and make better use of that space. That always seemed to make sense to me. So I don't know about 18-foot wide stores, but I think that the mix of physical space and then fulfilling in different ways, I think that what's going on there is very logical. It makes a lot of sense.
So I'll take that as a yes. Now, Jasmine, before you can rebut that.
I'm in.
So, Jasmine, let's kick us off with the fashion footwear and focus segment. What's in trend this week?
Okay, so I've been paying attention to like socks and no socks. We, during the summertime, people try to wear, shoes like boat shoes that you don't have to wear socks, but there's a lot of sneakers now. And even some of our gift bags in our CEO executive summit, like gift bags, I think we had like soles that you didn't have to wear socks, like you could change them out. So I'm like curious, is like socks out? Because there used to be a time where there used to be a lot of extravagant socks and it used to be really cool. People wanted to show them, but now I feel like it's not like as popular. I don't know if I like
really
miss that.
It's hilarious to me that you're asking me this day. Matt told me to keep this very evergreen, so not to hint at what time of year it is, but it is the summer. We're in the summer when we're recording this.
Sometime in the 21st century.
So I have 7 and 4-year-old two socks, and at camp today it was Silly Socks Day. So they wore their silly socks, but I was having a hard time convincing them to put them off this morning because it was the morning and they were groggy. And so I showed them I have those like sort of no-show socks that kind of look like a little ballerina toe thing.
Right, yeah, but they're super low.
I pranced around the house wearing those before I put them on underneath my sort of what seem like no sock shoes, but I'm wearing shoes with just little funny-looking socks today.
Is it important for you to have a pair of socks on? Like, is it uncomfortable for you not to wear your socks?
Oh, for me, yeah, I get too hot.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this then. Do you wear no-shows with your Deer Stacks no socks?
Yeah.
With no socks, I don't. And it's funny that you mentioned that, too, because I did. So I guess I'm really referencing the season, but I went whitewater rafting on Sunday.
Nice.
And I wore my no socks with no socks and wore them in the river, and it was phenomenal. And they just dry off. You can just throw them in the washing machine and let them air dry. So it started as a sort of standalone brand we were doing. And we didn't continue with the brand, but that one style is so great for things like that.
Yeah.
So,
okay, so I'm just going to confirm
truthfully don't wear
socks
too many
are
no shoes, but that one's great.
Well, you can also, I know a lot of people who don't wear socks with knit upper, right? Like it's almost like a sock in itself. So like I often, if I'm wearing my Boost, I don't wear socks with it if I'm going around the house doing stuff.
Well, walking around Brooklyn, because I am still a Brooklynite for another month or so, I do see a lot of guys wearing shorts and maybe like dress shoes and socks kind of up to the ankles. So it might be that socks are really coming back, and it's going the opposite way of that thing of the.
Maybe that's just Brooklandia. That could just be Brooklandia.
Yeah, no wonder he's moving.
I guess so. It's strange.
My dad has 3 pairs of no socks and uses.
Wow, strong.
He wears those for yard work and going to Lowe's and probably Walmart too, since the Walmart Lowe's is right next to each other.
Right next to each other,
You have to visit both if you're going.
Right next to the double wide that's going to sell wide shoes.
Right across from the buffet, the Golden Corral.
Oh, yeah.
In Monroe, North Carolina. That's not a joke. Danny, man, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing all your insights. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Danny. We appreciate it.
My pleasure, guys. Have a great one.
You too. Folks, it's a Shoe In Show. We're covering the ins and outs of all things footwear. You can find us on shoeinshow.com. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Drop us a line if you have ideas for topics for shows we can cover or guests we can have on. We're trying to cover all the different facets of our industry and all the changing ways in which we're interacting with consumers and how that's impacting operations. For Jasmine, Matt, and myself, thank you guys for listening. And until next time, Shoe In is out.
Shoe In has been brought to you by the FDRA,
Still on, is
the
he off?
Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. For information about FDRA, visit fdra.org